at this age, when I was late in the game, I was humble enough to know I'm willing to do this for free. I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to sponge. I'm willing to choose joy because it was joyful for me to just pick up and do these things and try them, but also not in my 20s where the ego would have said, no, you got to pay me, or no, that's not worth my time, or no, I'm better than that. So meeting this person and that person, this person led me to ultimately finding an agent.
Welcome to Discover More podcast. Congratulations on choosing curiosity and nuances. Let's get this started. This week's guest is Marco Rosario. Marco is a seasoned DJ from Philadelphia with 22 years of experience, an aspiring actor and model with over 50 commercials under his belt, a licensed mental health professional and barber, and what he calls a smile enabler. In the First Avenue DJ Profile Review, one of the longest running and most legendary venues where Prince and Lizzo launched their careers, to name a few, Marco shared his mission statement in the interview. I don't want to just throw an event, I want to make a memory. I came across Marco from his most recent viral Instagram reel that received 22.8 million views and nearly 100,000 likes, which led me down the rabbit hole of his multi-variable background. Very multi at that. The more I researched his stories and content, however, the more confused I became because it's obvious to me that he did not choose the path of least resistance in life. To this, Marco describes himself as, I don't have jobs, I have joys. Marco, glad the Instagram algorithm did something positive for once and allow us to connect across the country from Philadelphia to LA, and welcome to the show, man.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, what are the chances, right, where the social media has no downside but upside in our case? So as I introduced in the intro below for you, I've never heard anyone say this about, I don't have jobs, I have joys. And I sense a theme, a strong theme of choosing joy, no matter the circumstances. Could you share what that means to you?
It's easy for folks to say, I have to go to my job, or I have a job at that. But understanding that there are ups and downs, highs and lows with every job. It's not to say that you're going to enjoy every aspect of the job, but choosing joy, choosing gratitude in that position for myself, whether it's DJing, whether it's acting, barbering, or even my work in mental health. There's going to be highs and lows. There's going to be ups and downs. There's going to be days you don't want to get out of bed, but choosing the joy, choosing the gratitude, and recognizing that you're doing this for a reason. There's a purpose behind what I choose to do. I recognize that it's a joy to have.
Yeah, you just said something that I think is very worth mentioning, highlighting for, is no matter what job you have, you get to choose. Can you talk more about the empowerment in that? Because I think a lot of times we feel powerless when we feel like we're reacting to the reality. We're reacting to the job that we have, reacting to X, Y, and Z. But you talked about the choice that you have. What do you mean by that?
Really, and not to categorize it, but really removing the victim mindset or the problem mindset. A lot of times we look at discomfort or uncomfortable situations as something we're stuck in, or we, quote unquote, have to stay here. We always have a choice. And that can start with our mindset by, rather than saying, I have to go to this job, choose the mindset of, I want to go to this job, or I get to go to this job. In that, you can find the gratitude, the joy in the opportunities that you have and you can present, but also in how you carry yourself throughout the day. Again, it's not to say that every day is going to be a great day. Every day is not going to be, as they say, hunky-dory. But there are going to be moments where, it's all in the way you talk to yourself and the choice you make with that.
Yeah, I think that's how we get the power back, is by claiming control, claiming ownership. Otherwise, if we're always looking for, and there are real life circumstances, like some people don't have as much as privilege, some people are more oppressed, so that's very much real. But I think it is our responsibility to take control. And I think a good way to start is by saying that I get to choose versus I have to X, Y, and Z.
Right, yeah. And doing that, it's powerful in and of itself. It's not to say that you ultimately, things are just going to magically appear like that. Making the choice is one thing, but then doing the work, applying the effort. So choosing joy, choosing happiness, choosing optimism. but then choosing that I'm going to have this positive mindset, but also recognizing now I got to apply it. Now I got to present it and go forth with it.
Yeah. So speaking of making our choices and following through, right? It's not just it's not going to present you on a silver platter. You do have to be intentional. You do have to be consistent and follow through. In 2015, from my research, that's when you started your acting and modeling career. And that's also the same time you became a licensed mental health professional. And I think for a lot of actors and actresses, like acting and entertainment is a tough road. And most of them start very young.
Yeah.
Very, very young. But for you started pretty late. You know, why weren't you afraid to tackle something that, quote unquote, you had the disadvantage for because you came later in life?
I mean, there's layers to this. I wouldn't say I wasn't afraid. I was definitely afraid to explore it, especially, like you said, being an older participant in the acting world. But I realized, like you said, I got into it late, whereas I look at it like I got into it right on time. Because if I would have pursued acting in my teens and my 20s, I would have burnt out and fizzled away very quickly. I would have gotten frustrated with rejection. I would have probably not handled it very well. And who knows where that would have led me to. However, this may sound morbid. I lost my father in 2014, and I tell folks often, I needed my father to pass in order for me to live. And what that means is that my father was very sports driven, played double-A baseball, minor leagues, and that was kind of like raising his son, you play sports too, and it's kind of piggybacked off of that. And the acting side of things wasn't really an option, wasn't really there, but it was always something I wanted to do. Whereas as my father was passing away in 2014, I was also getting married at this time. Everybody's been to weddings, number of weddings with the introductions and all of that stuff for the reception. And I wanted to do something different. So I had a film student recreate the end scene from one of my favorite movies, Charlie Chaplin's Modern Times. And my wife, fiance at the time, to her credit, was all for it. She doesn't want anything to do with the camera or, the spotlight, but she was all for it. And working with the film student, I knew exactly what I wanted. I wanted this clip to be this way. I wanted the black and white grainy film, and then I wanted it to go into the into the color screen as the scenes transitioned and everything. And I was taking direction well, but I was also giving direction. And the film students were like, "You ever try acting? Like, you're pretty good at this. You ever want to do this?" And I'm like, "Yeah." So it was one of the things I was like, "Yeah, I could actually try this. This is interesting." And again, my father after this passed 6 weeks after. And I made a pact with myself to say, if not now, when? There was opportunity here for me to strike. I always look at signs as, that opportunity with working with a film student and saying, I don't want this to be the last time this happens. So one thing led to another. A film student used me for one of their student films. In turn, another student needed me for a film. And keep in mind, at this age, when I was late in the game, I was humble enough to know I'm willing to do this for free. I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to sponge. I'm willing to choose joy because it was joyful for me to just pick up and do these things and try them. But also not in my 20s where the ego would have said, no, you got to pay me. Or no, that's not worth my time. Or no, I'm better than that. So meeting this person and that person, this person led me to ultimately finding an agent. And I still find that kind of pretentious to say, like, I have an agent, but it was always the mindset that I said. It wasn't that I was late to the game. I was right on time because in my heart, I was ready to take on the opportunity.
Yeah. Sorry about the loss of your father. I do know that the grief that comes with losing a parent there's a lot of different levels of pain, but I think the grief of losing a parent is one of the highest tiers of pain. So I empathize with that deeply. And I want to zoom in on what you said, Marco, is I was humble enough to take directions or take whatever instructions from a film student who has a background in filming and giving cinematic pieces, right?
Yeah.
But I think a lot of that, whether it's humility, whether it's your curiosity, whatever you want to phrase it as, I think it comes down to your ability to be receptive
Yeah.
for what's coming your way. This receptivity,
Mhm.
right? Where do you think that comes from? Because I sense that in your ability to be receptive towards the signs, right? Or your receptive ability to listen to the directions, which gave you this momentum to be in more films and finally finding an agent. But have you always been receptive? Where is that from?
I always have been receptive, whether that was, again, my sports background when I was younger. Not so much thinking a step ahead, but feeling what's to come, what's being presented here, and how am I processing this, and how am I going to not react but respond to this. The receptiveness from the acting aspect was understanding that I am wet behind the ears. I am completely new to this. Like, and I was humble enough to say that. Like, I had no idea what it is I wanted to do when I got into acting. I just knew it was something that was a unique opportunity I've always been interested in, whether it was commercial, whether it was television, whether it was host and spokesperson, which I had never heard from until I got into acting, which is like teleprompter work and doing work for like hotels or hospitals. And I'm like, wait, that's acting? Like, I never knew. And I'm like, and then, being able to present and speak on stage in front of people, public speaking, but also that form of acting where your inflection and your tone and your delivery and all and your pacing and everything is important. And I was receptive to all of that because I was like, I don't know anything, but I'm here for it because, again, these film students who were maybe half my age at the time, and I'm sponging everything from them. Tell me why you're standing here with the camera. Tell me why we're over here. What's this thing with the lighting do? What happens if I go over here? Why do you want me on this angle? Like, asking all of these questions that, again, younger me would have been like, it don't even matter. Just, put me where I need to be. I'm the star, blah, blah, blah. But being receptive to it also means I'm now receptive of everybody in the room, not just myself. The cameraman, the director, the person holding the mic, everybody involved. And it gives everybody that teamwork feeling, but it also makes me feel like we're all accomplishing something.
I want to go down into the your career. Speaking of multivariable backgrounds, different things that you do, I think you're in a really unique position, Marco, from my point of view. What I mean by that is entertainment business or modeling/acting is one of the most toxic and stressful positions to be in. It's very, very tough. There's so much talent out there. There's endless of good-looking people, talented people, right? Mm-hmm. At the same time, you're also a mental health professional, which I think gives you this unique perspective. How have that experience been like doing these two seemingly unrelated professions? At the same time, I do think that there are some spilled over benefits, maybe one way or the other. Feel free to take this however you see fit.
It's never a dull moment. Put it that way. Speaking on myself, I hear rejection every single day. So in regards to my own mental health, how do I manage that? What I mean by that, by the rejection every day, is I may wake up to, I was expecting an email or expecting a callback and I don't get it. Or my agent flat out tells me, hey, better luck next time. So there's opportunities everywhere if you're willing to search for them. It's asking yourself what lane you want to go into and understanding, like you said, there's so many beautiful people inside and out. There's so many talented people. But it's understanding that you're not going to book everything. You're not going to be able to do everything. And then I meet people in the acting world who feel like they can do everything and want to do everything. And no matter what the cost. So I've met people in the hospital where I work that are comparable to people that I've met in the acting world when you're dealing with personalities and, personality behaviors and disorders even. Interesting to me because I always put that in perspective and say we are one bad reaction or one poor reaction away from changing the direction of this, this thing we're doing in life, whether it's acting or, whatever we're doing. I always tell people up front, if I can be vulnerable and I can be authentic and be genuine up front, then I feel you can be the same with me. And I would welcome that. Because especially in acting where we wear the mask and we kind of present differently, I'm going to be the same person. whether I'm working in the hospital, whether I'm DJing, whether I'm acting. Well, when the camera's not on, as far as the character. But I try to always be the same person consistently across the board. That way I want you to feel comfortable with who you are, if you know who you are. And if not, we can talk about it.
I want to zoom in on what you just said, Marco, that you not only experience rejections every day, but you're hyper aware of this possibility that you're always one bad reaction away from losing whatever you're doing. Can you elaborate more on that?
Yeah, like I said, it's not every day is going to be a good day. There may be days where, if we're talking acting, I'm only anticipated to be on set for 3 hours. We go 4, we go 5, we go 6. It's 90 some degrees. There are variables, and it's like, well, we didn't agree to this. The rate or the time or whichever. You can break down. The ego can kick in. I can't work like this under these conditions. You can go there, and that can kind of ruin the reputation for whether or not these people would work with you again. Because again, keep in mind that's a client. You're working for someone. Granted, it's a privilege and a great opportunity that you have, and they hired you to do that. But you're easily replaceable. That's also with acting. That's also with DJing. I could go to a DJ event and really not have the mindset or the attitude for the music that I'm playing. And I've done plenty of parties where it's not my cup of tea, whether it's a Sweet 16 or, the school dances or, how they say the kids today, the music today. So I can go into it with the attitude of whatever, I'm getting paid. I'll just play whatever and get through these next few hours. Chances are I'm probably not getting called back. Chances are I'm probably getting a bad review. It's, again, in that mindset. I can choose joy. If I choose to take the opportunity, I could choose joy, treat it like it's my last job, and carry on from there. Same thing in the hospital. And anybody who works in a hospital setting will know that patients will test your patience. They'll push your buttons, and they'll get you to the point where it's like, I'm one bad decision away from being in the gown as opposed to being on the other side here. So, and it happens. We're human. At the end of the day, we're human in that aspect. So a lot of it just comes down to, having to be able to not react, but respond. Recognize what's going on here. Not personalize a lot of the things that are going on, and always be open to have those conversations. Hey, is there anything I can do here? Hey, is there anything we need to work on to speed up the process, whether it's acting? Hey, is there anything you need for music in terms of the kids? Do the kids have specific playlists? Is there anything I can do for them during the event? Just giving examples as far as ways to, it may, again, not be the ideal situation I want to be in, but I have no choice but to make the most of it because I would like to continue doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, that reminds me of a quote where he says the bliss is a space between your response and the stimuli. And I think between that space lies our power. But then obviously you can only tap into that space if you have mindfulness practices, you meditate, maybe you understand that humans are entirely reactive species, period. We're just 8 billion individual trigger points walking around every single day navigating what we call life. And out of that 8 billion people, some people are more mindful, some are less. And obviously, it does directly contribute to the world burning down every single day. But that's my cynicism speaking through. Speaking of balancing, maybe cynicism and optimism, for you, how do you, Marco, balance between these reviews that you get from your gigs as a DJ, from booking a show or a shoot as a model / actor, versus your worth. You know that you're wholesomely who you are. You are Marco, despite and in spite of what the review says. At the same time, your job in many areas are predicated on the validations of your clients and these gigs that you do. Yeah. So how do you balance the two?
Oh, okay. This might not be the popular answer, but the power of saying no. I have absolutely no problem saying no. We'll start with acting again. I may see submissions for certain roles or certain castings that are coming up, and I decide whether or not I want to do it. I look at the semantics, all the specifics that come with it. No, I'll go somewhere else. No, I'm going to, turning down DJ events. Or, luckily in a position where I'm in, I can pass that on to another DJ. I can't be in 3 places at one time, but I also understand knowing my worth, I'm more beneficial in a club setting or a wedding. So being able to say, hey, no, listen, I'm not available that day, or I've got someone that I feel comfortable sharing, with you. Um, it's in that open line of communication. You know, I've done it in the hospital with patients where, I've talked to coworkers and I said, hey, listen, I don't feel comfortable doing this particular group. Would you do this one and we'll switch? Rather than try to put my best foot forward and fake it, as they say, because I don't feel I'm doing the patient a disservice in that attitude, in that aspect. So being able to say no and recognizing when my worth is, being best suited for a specific role or a specific gig or anything like that.
You have to be self-aware and be aware of what ticks you for both good and bad for you to then create that space to respond to, right? This is a personal curiosity from what you just said, and I'm sure a lot of the listeners at this point are thinking, Jesus, hospital, patients, acting, DJing. I'm sure they're confused as well, of course, from your multivariable background.
Right.
But how do your maybe coworkers in the hospital or maybe a fellow DJs, how do they feel about all these different really cool things that you do as someone that is, deeply curious and passionate that you are?
I can answer that from the hospital side. A lot of DJs, I'm not really sure. I haven't really tapped into this conversation with them. Just I think because a lot of our stuff is in passing, gig to gig, or usually it's based around the gigs. The hospital, though, 100% supportive. I started at the hospital shortly after, like 4 months after I graduated. And I went in as a per diem employee, knowing that I was going to pursue acting at the same time. It was something I wanted to do. And I also had my DJ work. Since the pandemic, my hours have increased, but I also, again, let them know this is my availability. And I'm not changing my status in terms of per diem to part-time or part-time to full-time or any of that stuff. I'm willing to give you what you're willing to take. And where I work has been entirely supportive of that. And they also say, like, when do you sleep? How do you manage all of this? And I'm like, again, it may seem like I'm active and I'm busy, but it's by design. I kind of call it organized chaos, but I don't want to paint it in a picture of like, oh my God, he's all over the place. It's organized in that I can tell you day in and day out what I'm doing, and I thrive on it because it's not boring to me, but it's also not anything that I can't handle. I'll give you yesterday, for example. I'm at the hospital on a Monday. Following the hospital, I come home. I'm taking Spanish lessons because I want to, on top of that, I'm taking that. So I know I work at the hospital until 3 o'clock. My Spanish lesson is at 4 p.m. I do Spanish from 4 to 5. I have to eat. Okay, so I'm going to eat dinner after that, and then I have some downtime. Then I normally do my Mental Health Monday streams on Twitch, where I provide like an hour or so of insight to people on there. So I have that window of how am I going to transition? After Spanish, I'm eating dinner, taking time to myself. I'm chill. I'm good. Then it's time to present and do my mental health stream at 9 p.m. Eastern. And again, I set the tone there. I can go an hour, I can go 2, I can go as long as I want. But I check in with myself and I say, we're covered here. Everything is good. You guys want to check in with me? By all means, set that boundary. But yeah, I've been presented with a lot of questions from coworkers. How do you do what you do? Why do I do what I do? Because a lot of the people that I work with are set in that 9 to 5 conditioned mindset. And that works for them. It's also, I'm always open to say, hey, you can always do the things that you want to do. You got to prioritize and try to make the time for them.
Yeah, I'm sure the questions or the curiosity that a lot of your coworkers have is pretty common at this point of the podcast for a lot of the listeners as well. So I do appreciate that. And once again, it goes back to how we started it. It's not that you have to, it's you get to make a decisions about what you want to do or where you allocate your energies and time. And in addition, you're also a full-time father, as you call yourself, of course, a partner to your wife, your family. So not even to mention all that priorities. In terms of the joys and your ability to say no to the opportunities that are not aligned with who you are,
Yeah.
like your worth.
Mm-hmm.
And also saying yes to the right opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think a lot of successful people, they're better at saying no than saying yes.
Yeah.
But by saying no, you free up enough capacity emotionally, physically, mentally to pursue what you want.
Yeah.
I want to visit one of your highlight moments of your life is when you performed and sold out event at the First Avenue in Minneapolis, where it was a trampoline, so to speak, where springboarded a lot of greats, right? Prince, the Chocolate Rain movie, the show, and also Lizzo, and the list goes on and on. Could you walk us through the experience of this joy that you felt from saying no to the opportunities, but also saying yes to the right ones?
I got to shout out my man, Dave Paul, DJ Dave Paul out in San Francisco. I've been with him. He and I have been working together for about, oh my gosh, 10 years. Oh, that hit me. About 10 years now. He and I worked our way up to First Avenue. Like I said, it's been out in San Francisco, Los Angeles, Philadelphia here, New York, DC, multiple cities. But Minneapolis was like the creme de la creme, as they say, because of Prince. You know, it's a Prince and Michael Jackson party. And Purple Rain, you know, the movie from 1984, where if you've seen the movie, that venue is what put Prince on the map. And to say it was surreal would be an understatement. Like, just to step in there before sound check and just like the look around, right? Like, oh my God. Like I'm taking everything in. And I just had that feeling like, this is going to be an incredible night. Like, this is going to be like an amazing, amazing night. And we knew pre-sale tickets and everything, and it was building up, and I was just like, can you believe this? Like, are we really going to do this? Like, is this like, 1,200, 1,300? And it's like, this might happen. And as the doors come, yeah, we have a sold out event at First Avenue. And I'm like, to me, that was a culmination of the work he's put in, the work I put in. He'll always say, he's like, dude, you have enough energy for both of us. Like, I don't know how you just as far as like the optimism and the going on stage and everything. But everything is energy. Everything is energy, because he and I knew this was something special. And to see the audience, and these people came from all over, not just Minneapolis. I remember there was a lady that came from Australia. They were in Minneapolis, I guess, for that week or weekend or whatever. And they came over and said to us, this was part of our trip, like coming to Minneapolis to visit, Prince and Prince-like attractions, but also this event. And I was like, wow, wow, like to take all that in. And I always say there's bucket list events. I can't top that in terms of DJing for myself. Like there's nothing I can do that's going to get any bigger or better than that for me, because it's actually one of the events where I got to walk away. I'm with another DJ, so he would take on a set and, play a set for a little bit. And I actually walked away from the booth and went up to like the top area and just looked at everything. I just like I took a moment to take all that in. That was, I took a picture too, but it was like, it was insane to me. I was just like, this really happened. Like it was great.
Yeah, man, I got some goosebumps on this side of the table because not only because you create an event that will forever be someone's memory from Australia as part of that tourism week, whatever. That's mind-boggling to begin with, is that someone will always carry your performance with them.
Yeah.
In other side of the country or other side of the world, which is pretty nuts. And yeah, I do know that that's in line with your mission statement of you don't want to just create an event, you want to create a memory. It sounds like you were able to achieve that on a whole different level for many, many people. 1,300 attendance. So for you as a professional DJ, I'm sure you've heard this saying from many people that the generation before us always hype up their generation music and talk trash about the new ones. So as a millennial, I've heard this saying of, dude, 80s and 90s music was the best. I was like, first of all, I'm a 90s baby. Secondly, I feel like music is just because music's a vehicle and a vessel, and that's where people and music just connect. So I don't really think there is a better genre of music, so to speak. But for you, how do you view that thoughts or this debate between, oh, my generation music is always better than yours? Do you feel like as a professional DJ, is there such thing as an inferior genre of music?
Not an inferior genre of music, but when you put it in terms of professionalism, to me, the music is secondary. Any good DJ will tell you 90% of DJing is observing the crowd. and looking out at that crowd and knowing exactly what to play and when to play it. It could be a song, it could be from the Motown era. It could be a song from the 90s. It could be a song that just, what I like to call a universal sound. You walk into a department store and everybody knows it. Like it's one of those songs. You may not dance in the department store, but everybody knows it. So it's one of those feelings, again, in terms of being able to observe and be aware of what you're surrounded by in a room. And that's actually the beauty of the parties now, in that when we do an 80s party or a 90s party, we get a lot of millennials. We'll get a lot of 20 somethings, early 20 somethings that are like, wow, your mama raised you right. Like it's really interesting to see. And they'll dress up and everything, and they'll do like the colors and everything. It's really fun to see. To answer that question though, like I look at even like patients with dementia, how they say a lot of their long-term memory comes from music of their teenage years, their high school years. So I feel like that is more of a heart's connection rather than a mind's connection, in that, yes, it's stemming memory, but it gives you that feeling of where you were and who you were with, when you were 15, 16 years old. And I can say for myself, like I'm always in my downtime when I'm not DJing. Yeah, I'm kind of stuck in the 90s. I'm kind of stuck in that, like the music from my high school time. I'm not dissing or denying the music of today, but I think it's fundamentally packaged a certain way as opposed to what it was back, in the 70s, 80s, 90s, or even the 2000s, early 2000s.
I think the two most powerful vehicles of cultural and whatever breakers is food and music. I do think that the language and the art of food and music are universal. It transcends, because sports, there's this competitive bloodthirst drive, right? And it also divides, but most often at large, music and food, they don't really divide. They only unify people. And that's pretty awesome. This is another personal curiosity of mine is, do you remember the first few gigs or performance where you just bombed it? Because I sort of view musical performance, whether you're a rapper, musicians, or a DJ, similar to stand-up comics, because you have to time the timing. There's a rhythm to it. There's a cadence and the tempo to how you perform. I would love to visit some of the highlighted bombing experience that you have, if any.
Not to my, it wasn't anything I did. I got caught in the middle of how do I move forward from this? Long story short, somebody's ex showed up at the wedding, put it that way. Rather than bring down the music, I heightened it. And I kind of was like an instigator, I guess you could say. And again, this is early in my DJ career that, lesson learned. But I thought I was being funny. I thought I was trying to make a rough situation lighter. I was looking for the humor, looking for like, haha, let's move on. And it didn't work, because what turned into an altercation between two people ended up escalating into much more, and the party got shut down. And you want to say bombed, like that was complete bomb, stop everything, stop traffic, shut it down, you're leaving. And I felt terrible, because it was one of them things like I didn't have to be funny. I didn't have to play the theme from Bad Boys. I didn't have to because I remember it like, the cops are on their way, dude. Like you kind of messed up here. I didn't have to do any of that. I didn't have to like sound effects and things like that. Like, it was just, yeah, I tried to be funny. I tried to be comical. I tried to be the lighthearted one to say, come on, man, we can move past this. And in the heat of the moment, nope, bad decision.
I mean, I shout out to your comedic ingenuity and creativity that went into playing the Bad Boys, hyping up the scene.
Yeah.
Even though
comedic timing was there.
Yeah, comedic timing was definitely there. The punchline didn't miss, but I appreciate the creativity. Let's ride this train about being multifaceted as this Marco, this person that encompasses different, not just professions, but different careers. At the same time, I could imagine some of the listeners at this point might be asking themselves, oh, but we live in a specialized society. You want to be a specialist versus the generalist. You should dedicate 5 to 10 years refining and honing one profession before you do something else. And of course, that's your case. I do know that you started a barber, and then after X amount of years, you started to answer to your curious call to see where life could lead you down. But we do live in capitalistic America, where this subsystem thinking, this subspecialty is put on a pedestal. They're like, oh, you can only do one thing and do that thing well. Don't even think about other things, just do that. Do you have anything that comes up for you for anyone that might be thinking like that or dealing with some of these chatter?
Yeah, that irks me. Not many things irk me, but that irks me. Um, I say that because if I need a back surgery, I wouldn't go to a dentist. Yeah, obviously, because you're going to go to a specialist, right? But who's to say you can't specialize, in that one thing and generalize in those other things? The reason I'm a mental health professional today is because I was a barber, or I am a barber. And many men will tell you your barber is your first form of therapy. You feel comfortable sharing everything with them. The old saying goes, you'll cheat on your wife before you cheat on your barber. They can be vulnerable there. They can let their hair down. Literally, they can let their hair down and just chill. They can hang out and talk about whatever. And that to me taught me how to be a good listener, how to listen to understand rather than listen to respond. I wasn't interested in the banter or the back and forth. I would hear other people, talking sports or whatever the case was, and just understanding. They sound so passionate. Why? And when it was my time to speak, I would do those things. And for myself, I'm very aware. I'm very receptive. I'm emotionally intelligent. So it was a natural transition for me to say, I want to help people. I want to help people, in these positions, in this area. DJing was always a hobby that I said, you know what? I'm going to make money off of a hobby. Since I was a child, an infant, music was always around me. So I was like, if there was one thing I love, hands down above anything else, it's music. So how can I benefit and how can I profit from this? I became a DJ. Acting, like I said, I always felt like I was on stage. I always felt like I could present. I always felt like I had the personality or the conviction to hold your attention. It's not that I wanted attention, is that I felt I could present it in that way. So when the time was right, I got into acting. This is a moment of vulnerability. I went to a seminar in San Diego. We won't drop names. I went to a seminar in San Diego, and I went vulnerably looking for answers, looking for help, looking for some kind of guidance. And I said the same thing. I said, I do all of these things, and people are enamored by the fact that I do all of these things, and how do I find all this time? But for myself, how do I hone all of it? How do I bring it all together? How do I channel everything, all of my joys, all of my passions, and how do I create this dynamic? And he told me the same thing. Maybe you should just focus on one thing. And I'm like, this man's very successful, however you define his success, rich, well off. But he wasn't listening, because I told you that I have all of these passions. Why would I eliminate or remove, some of them to focus on one when I feel confident in everything that I do? And if I need to grow and build on it, I take the time and I prioritize that. If I need to learn more continuing education with mental health, I do so. If I take acting classes, I do so. Barbering lessons and stuff like that, as styles change, I do so. So I walked away from that so deflated and so defeated. Searching for these answers is not going to help on the external level. I need to find this from within. And from that time in November, I said to myself, and without cursing, if it's not an F yes, it's a no. Everything that I enjoy doing, it's an F yes. I absolutely love helping people, being of service to people in the mental health realm. I love performing when it comes to acting and saying yes to the certain roles that I take. I love DJing when the energy in the crowd and all of that's, everything's, the essence is all there. I love cutting hair for the simple fact that I get to see people that I've known since my childhood, and friends that I've made, recently since the pandemic and all. I love that. Everything else, okay. I don't get distracted by it.
Yeah, I think a lot of times people tend to give you the advice that they think you want to hear, but then that doesn't really work for mindful people.
But I feel like they give the advice that works for them based on their experiences.
Or the so-called success blueprint, according to the interweb, right?
Yeah.
I share that story resonates me pretty deeply because I had this life coach a year and a half ago, Jacqueline, amazing. She was a 2-time TED speaker, best-selling author. She talks about how during her deepest stage of depression and loss and hopelessness, her therapist actually told her that, hey, what do you want to do in 5 years? And she's like, what do you mean? I can't even think about tomorrow or next week. I'm not thinking about 5 years. I think that would have been a good advice or a good question in any other context except the context of life that she was in at that very moment. And it completely missed, and she prematurely terminated her therapeutic relationship with her therapist because she's like, this is useless. She's not listening. And that's what active listening is, right? You're not just listening, but you're truly internally foregoing of what you want to say, what you think the other person want to hear. Just let it go and just literally taking what they say at their face value. And that's a very difficult skill that I really picked up from doing podcasting for the past 3 years. And it has benefited me as a clinician in my career, as a boyfriend, to my girlfriends, to my friends. When I go to barber shops, they tell me things they've never told any people. And I'm just listening and I'm just responding to what they're saying. And they tell me all of these things. I was like, I guess I did choose the right career at the end of the day.
Yeah. There's nothing I love more, especially in the barber chair, because men particularly, when they go, I've never told anybody this, but, and they lead with that. And it's just like the amount of trust that they have in me, or the amount of comfort that they feel talking to me, like that really bodes well. Like, I'm like, wow, like I appreciate the fact that, you're willing to share this, and again, as a professional, mental health professional, that's also taught me again, the active listening, not having to respond to everything that they say. Just listen, let them get it out, let them, have their moment, as they say. And if they're asking you for advice, sure. But also, are you asking the right questions? Do you mind if I, give you advice? Do you mind if I, help you with this? Rather than just say, hey, here's what you need to do. Here's what you should do. Because a lot of us will do that, being reactionary. I find so much joy in that, because there's so many guys that I've met that are, they have the wall up, they're bottled up, and they're programmed to be a certain way. And over time, I've realized that, wow, these guys are just like anybody else, that they just, they want love and affection and to be understood, and, to know that they matter.
Yeah, I think a lot of women may not understand this, but I do know that Marco shared the quote as a joke that men will cheat on their spouses before they cheat on their partners.
Yes.
Of course, it's a joke, but men do share a very special relationship with their barbers.
Yeah.
And even among men, if you're a barber cheater, you get shunned upon by many, many people. And it's not just a haircut. It's the presentation. It's the energy exchange. It's it's all that chemistry that's very inarticulable.
It's funny, and I laugh at that, because during the pandemic, obviously everything was shut down, and even for myself, acting and DJing was shut down, but also barbershops were shut down. So on my Facebook, I was like, well, I understand barbershops are shut down, but my house is open, and it's only 8 steps from the door to my chair. And, I took all the precautions with sanitizing and everything like that. And just being like silly, just putting it out there, I gained so many more clients. People came in for haircuts, and this is why I say it. Hey, do you know such and such, do you know how they cut? You're not going to tell them that I came, did you? No. But seriously, it gets to the point where they're very nervous, because once you have that relationship with your barber, they know your head, they know the nuances, as far as the crown and the different, swirls in your hair. They know all of that stuff. I'm comfortable with this person. I don't want to change, who I'm with. And I totally get it. And human nature, a lot of folks aren't really receptive to change in the first place.
Well, I get a new stylist barber when I moved to a new city, and that first haircut is so stress inducing, because you have to over contextualize, you have to explain everything. I usually save 2 to 3 pictures to show them in addition to the reference points. Very stressful.
Yeah.
I don't care about my clothing, outfit, the car I drive, but I do care about the haircut.
Yeah.
Most men do. So and I do this on a funny note. I did cheat on my barber in Philly, because after the COVID shutdown, that barber didn't take any precautionary measures. They were just letting people roll through. And I was like, I can't, I work in a clinic. My partner is a physician. I can't do this. So I unfortunately had to depart and found a new barber. And when I walked past him and the barber, because that barber is on my way home, my original barber, I will feel guilty.
Yep.
I would have this subconscious walk of shame, and I would cross the street knowing that I might encounter my barber.
See, yeah.
So yeah, it's real. It's on a funny note. So I sense a thread of your ability to deal with the uncertainties, your ability to deal with the unknown, right? Because you're right. As a reminder, I forgot that because of COVID shutdown, barbers, a lot of brick and mortar service-based industries were complete shutdown with no tentative date on the horizon. On a macro level, applies to your ability as an actor and model, right? Booking gigs, even as DJ, because nothing is guaranteed. There's no guaranteed streams of income, so to speak. So I feel like this level or this ability to deal with unknown is embedded in a lot of your identities. Can you speak more about how have you dealt with uncertainties, but like what does uncertainty mean to you?
Um, there's two ways I can look at it. I can be afraid of it, which is human nature. I don't know what's expected. I don't know what's to come, or I can be excited for it. And fear and excitement are the same cognitive emotion. It's which one I choose to give energy to. So when the pandemic hit, like anybody else, I had some fears. I had some, reluctance. I had some some hesitation in terms of what I was going to do next. I didn't want to. Again, we didn't know. But like anybody else who was affected by the pandemic, I had a lot of downtime. I wasn't really submitting for acting jobs because they weren't there. My DJ gigs were canceled. So you scroll social media from time to time and you look and see what's going on just to pass the time. And I just happened to be looking on Facebook and I noticed a theme. I don't know. I don't know what to do. What's going to happen? Why are they saying this? How am I going to pay my rent? How, like all of these fears again, and all these worries. And I'm sure anybody knows, like their social media or Facebook can be littered with, negativity, but I didn't see this as negativity. I saw this as more of a help, you know, searching for answers. And that's where I just looked at it like, I don't know what's going to come of this, but if I lead with authenticity and serve, maybe I can help someone. And maybe in turn, by helping someone, that could help me. Maybe this could lead me in a direction to say, yeah, what do I got to lose? I'm sitting around literally doing nothing. So let's see what happens. And that's really, the take I had on it. Same thing with acting, same thing with working in the hospital. I always say working in the hospital is never a dull moment because the census always changes. I work in an inpatient facility where the average patient's there, was there 7 to 10 days. Now with placement, things are a little longer, but the census, the roster, I guess you could say, is changing. We might get those patients that are like, oh, okay, functionally, they're good, and they have good skills in terms of being able to receive the information. And then there's days where we get those unpredictable individuals, violent tendencies, unpredictable behaviors. So again, never a dull moment, and that is the unknown. How am I going to adjust to this? How am I going to handle this? How am I going to modify the group or my approach with them? Leading with authenticity, being genuine, being upfront with them, and understanding that, again, if I'm able to serve them, if I'm able to help them in some way, this could lead to the breakthrough that they need and make my job much, much easier going forward.
Yeah, I appreciate how not just authentic and genuine, but you're very fluid with the way you talk about different sections and sectors of your identities, right? Because every time you speak, it's DJs, the hospital, the patients, the barber, right? But even your way of life, your way of being, I could see that all these intersectional identities truly have become part of who you are. And I really appreciate your fluidity with talking about your experiences in and out of different professions. It's very cohesive, right? Let's zoom in on something you mentioned, that during the great pause, as a lot of people call COVID, right? But especially in the beginning, it was a lot scarier than just the great pause. We thought it was a great death or the great end. During that, you talked about you were doing social media strolling, and a lot of people do have a lot of the feedbacks and timelines are littered with negativity, as you said. But as you mentioned, I think you might know where this question goes. The way we came across is, of course, algorithms, and you being the beneficiary of a viral sensations of this a filter reel with 22.8 million
It's insane.
views, which is and 100,000 likes from people you'll never see each other. You'll never know what they look like. They could be Sally Pants 24 on right. You don't know, but that's a very unique experience that not a lot of people have, but a lot of people are dream of, especially teenagers, young adults, content creators. So like, oh man, if I could have one content that gets 22 million views, that could really change someone's trajectory of career if they're in the content creation world. Can you just walk us through the experience and just share what came with it, some of your perspective? And this is a vast question, but take it however you like.
I'm going to take it consistently the way I've taken it since it's happened. It may be boring to some. I'm sorry, but I'll preface with that. It was just one of those things. I was scrolling, sitting around with the kids. I think it was like right after dinner, and just looking at stuff. And this reel had come up that was like the top part of the filter, and then the bottom part is my face. But the top part is like both of my left sides, and the bottom part is both of my right side. So it looks like two different people, but it's the same person. And people in the comments were like, it's the lighting, it's this, it's that, it's two different people, whatever they came up with. I honestly did not entertain the comments, but it was all just because, oh, this looks cool, I'll share it. And I never, for myself, I'm not the type, I don't do TikTok, I don't do reels, like I don't get caught up in the the challenges or any of that hashtag stuff. I'm not one for that. Not knocking it, it's just not me. It's just not something I wanted to do. So I did the reel. I showed the kids. I'm like, hey, look at this. And kids, as teenagers do, went, eh. I was like, okay, cool. I think I'm going to share it. And I shared it. And so I left it at that, not thinking anything of it. It just went, I guess, like the algorithm caught on. And every time I opened Instagram, it just went. It went from, I don't know, 100,000 views, 200,000 views, how it goes. To one day, my buddy caught on to it. He's like, dude, this might reach 1 million. I'm like, yeah, I don't know. Like, what do I do? He's like, dude, you're in the algorithm. You should really take advantage of this. I'm like, what do you mean take it? Like, what do I do? Like, I'm not going to do another filter or anything like that. Like, that's not the content I want to do, if anything. So again, with me being aware, I was like, if I'm going to be recognized for something, what do I want to be recognized for? Like, if this is bringing traction to my page, what am I going to do? So I started doing mental health reels. And a lot of the mental health minutes were 1-minute blurbs about probably the content I was covering that week or the week prior, and just giving some insight, just to, again, draw traction on my page. And little by little, those started to pick up 8,000 views, 9,000, whatever. But that other filter kept going. 1 million turned to 4 million, 6 million. One day, me and my buddy literally watched it go from 8 to 10 million overnight. The likes, the comments, and I realized I don't want any parts of this. I don't want the dopamine rush to come with it, because believe me, I'm checking to see. But you saw, like, the Instagram stories, I would make fun of it. Every time it reached another million, I would be like, this is my Thriller. This is my Thriller album. Like, this is what I'm going to be known for. Absolutely nothing. And I would kind of, I wasn't trying to minimize it, but I was mocking it, because it was, to me, it was like, again, I didn't do anything but click send. Like, I didn't put any creative effort into that. I didn't put any, script or fancy nothing. I didn't do anything but just followed a trend. I followed a trend. And I made it my own by putting it in my story, and just kept sharing it in my story. And that's how you saw me. You said, but because I shared that, you came across that, saw the story, and were like, yeah, there's more to you than just that story or just that filter. And I appreciate that, because I'm like, of all 22.8 million, like you said, this happened. And I'm like, and this to me is what was meant to come from it. There's an opportunity there, and there's growth there, and there's a connection. But would I do it again? No. I probably won't do another silly filter or anything like that. Like, there's nothing to come of that. I'm not joining TikTok to do all that stuff. But I do understand. I do understand it from the psychology perspective. I do understand it from the mental health perspective and wanting the attention, wanting to go viral, the need to do that, and the need to keep up with the relevancy and the challenges and everything that's out there. It's to me, it's scary because people lose their identity in that, and they really get caught up in the external validation, being accepted and liked by others when really they don't even know who they are themselves. And those are the people I really want to connect with. Those are the people I really want to work with. I want to, just ask the simple questions of why, why do you do this? What do you get from this? What are you looking to gain from this? And then the question that really throws them off, well, who are you? And then it's like, it goes a whole other direction from there.
The temptation to stick to this viral proof blueprint as a content creator, if you were lucky enough to have a viral content, that urge is very, 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 very real. And I think your ability to say no, the art of saying no shines through once more, right? And I think that's what allowed you to, sure, you're doing 14 different things now in life, but you still are very purposeful and very intentional with the directions you want your life to be. Because life is both short and long. And that both is simultaneously true, right? Because I'm 29 and I've done 2 careers. I'm a veteran, former policymaker, and now I'm a clinician, podcaster. And I'm only 29. I'm not even 30 yet. And I really get this question a lot of, oh, you're pretty young. How have you done all of these? And I'm sure you get asked the same thing. Is my answer is, if you're being curious and intentional and being decisive with your ability to say no and say yes, you'll be surprised by how much life you can squeeze into a year or 2. It's very, very interesting. But that's a conversation for a different topic. I want to go down to this sort of train, right? Because once again, we talked about saying yes and saying no. And I want to highlight your ability to say no to no. I'm not going to replicate another filter reel just so I can put my page in the algorithm again. Because even though you gain like 3,000 subscribers or 3,000 followers on Instagram overnight.
Yeah, I went from like 1,220 to like almost 3,500, but I've lost some since then. And obviously, they realize the magic is gone, and I'm like, I'm okay with that.
Yeah. So, and that comes down to my question. It's part of our quality process where I asked you, what are some things you're most proud of? What are the success stories you value too? And you talked about my ability to set whatever I want to do and for me to achieving that, right? Can you elaborate on your response of what did you mean by I truly did everything I wanted to do?
What I mean by that is everything I set out to do in my life, I've done. And even on the minor scale, and I'm going to lead with that. My best friend of over 30 years, to this day, our dream job in life was to work at Taco Bell. And we did that. And I always lead with that because I'm like, yo, that's like the funniest thing. Like, you're 12, 13 years old, and what do you want to do with your life? Oh, we want to work at Taco Bell. Why? Because mom would always take us to Taco Bell, and that was Taco Bell, And when he left and moved to Pittsburgh, I missed my buddy, and I went out there and stayed with him for a summer. And I was like, yeah, I'm coming out. His mom and dad, of course, they're like my second parents, and sure, come on out for the summer, hang out. If you're gonna come out, you got to work because you're not just gonna stay here for nothing. Okay. Well, what do I do? Well, Timmy's working at Taco Bell. What? What? So filling out the application and the whole interview process at the time, and it was all a formality because I was getting the job. But it was just one of the things I'm like, yo, this is really happening, man. Like we're 18 or whatever we were, 17, 18 at the time after high school, and we're working at Taco Bell. And I worked at Taco Bell with my best friend for 8 weeks. I can say that, and that to me was like the funniest thing because I always said my dream job was working at Taco Bell, and we worked at Taco Bell. On top of that, DJing, I always said if I was going to DJ, I'd wanted to DJ in multiple states. I want to be able to say I've traveled. I was actually paid to travel to DJ and do what I love. I've done that, and I'm continuing to do that. Acting, which I still have goals, but my friends have seen me on TV. My family goes, I know him. Like I always had visions of saying that. I want to see myself on TV. I want my friends and family to one day look up and go, oh, yo, I know him. And it's happened. It still happens. I literally had a teacher from high school message me yesterday and say, "Did you do a Kitchen Saver commercial?" And I'm like, "Yes, Miss. I don't want to say her name, but yes, Miss. That was me." "Oh my God, my husband! I just told him, wow, look at you!" And I'm like, "Yeah, I haven't seen you in like 20 some years, but yeah, thank you." Like it's stuff like that. Like everything I've set out to do, I've done. And my wife says, "Don't say that. Don't say that. Your life's not over. Like, don't say that." And I was like, "No, I'm saying it in that, like, I still have things I want to do, parts of the world I want to see, trips and travel." I said, "But what that does, it keeps me grounded, but also keeps me motivated to say that I can do more. I can do more. I don't have a specific vision on terms of, what lies ahead with DJing or what lies ahead with acting even, but I'm on the right path, and I'm doing those things." Correction. I always said I wanted to cut a celebrity's hair. I haven't done that yet. So, but this was also when I worked in a barber shop. You ever see like, I don't know, like the movies or television shows like where they're in a barber shop and a celebrity just happens to come in and they're like, "Oh, yo, hey," and he randomly picks that barber. I wanted that moment. I haven't had that yet, but
maybe, when this podcast gets big enough, I'll go to your salon and you can cut my hair.
There it is.
So
Got your spot
that's how
for you.
the story will write itself.
There it is.
Speaking of teacher, that I messaged you yesterday from 20 plus years ago who were ecstatic and happy by seeing her former students being in a TV commercial, right? In our qualitative process, Marco, you said one of the most impactful moments and stories you wanted to uphold is you start to develop air quotes trust issues from your 10th grade teacher. We'd love for you to elaborate what that story entails and for us to revisit on the mic.
Part of what I want to do ultimately in life is be a storyteller. Like whether it's presenting monologues or sharing stories on stage. I always say I'm going to make you laugh, I'm going to make you cry, I'm going to make you dance, I'm going to make you feel. And I feel like this is my opening. This is why I have trust issues. And because I remember it vividly. I remember that I was at a point in my life where sports wasn't me. It was my dad. But I always wanted to do acting. I wanted to do something where I could perform. And I wanted to try the drama club. And to quote my dad at the time, "That's for weirdos. That's not." So in my mind, I was like, well, I don't really think I don't have my dad's support. Because I don't really know. And as a teenage boy at the time, that hits, like you want your dad to support you. He kind of backhanded supported me. "If that's what you want to do, sure, yeah, well," but it didn't seem like it was really there. So my grades started to slip. I kind of went inward, isolated a lot. I wasn't really engaging in class, and I wasn't really like up for much. A teacher who I will refrain. When the story comes out, I'll probably change her name. But it's a teacher approached me and said, "I noticed your grades were slipping. What's going on with that?" And at the time, I thought she was sincere. Like she sincerely wanted to know what's going on. So I shared, "Hey, listen, I don't really like sports. I don't want to play sports. And I figured if my grades dropped, then I wouldn't be eligible to play. So I don't want to do it anymore. And I don't know how else to tell my dad I don't want to play sports." "Well, I'll tell you what. If you pick your grades up, maybe we can have a conversation. I want to drop my grades so I don't play sports. Why would I pick my grade up?" So then I was like, okay, well, you know what? If I pick my grades up, here's what I want to do. I want to be part of the drama club. I want to do acting. She's like, "You know what? I always see you that way. I always thought you'd be on Broadway or something. You're very funny. You have like such a personality and, blah, 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 blah. I'll tell you what, if you bring your grades up," the class was environmental science, okay? Ugh. "If you bring your grade up in environmental science, I know people and I'll tell them about you. And I'll let them know that, you're interested. And not only just do the drama club here in school, I'll have you meet people in New York." Again, I'm 15 years old. My eyes get really big. I'm like, the possibilities. Okay. So I went from a C minus to a B plus in one marking period. Boom. Here's the paper. Hey, look, I brought the grade up. This lady knew nobody. She had no pull. She had no connections. That's great. That's great. Keep it up. But what about your end? What are you doing here? When I tell you that sat with me, the story, I'm sure I'll make it funny along the way as I edit it. But that sat with me probably again up until like my darkest days in like 2009. So we're talking a good 15 years. That moment of not being able to trust teachers, not being able to trust people in those positions, for people to say, "Do for me and I'll do for you." It really left me in a weird space because I started to go again inward, but trusting that I had to do everything. I couldn't rely on anybody else to do it for me, and I started to do for me. My 20s were very topsy turvy, I guess you can say. I was driven, but I wasn't focused. Like I would do this and then go this way, disconnected in that way. And a lot of it is because of this teacher and this one specific interaction. So, teachers, if you're out there listening, or even students, trust your gut, trust yourself. Teachers don't ever do that to a student. Say what you mean and be upfront. Because I should have called her bluff early on. I'm like, well, if you know people in New York and doing this, why are you teaching here in this school? But again, lesson learned. And it really molded me. It really molded me for a long period of time.
This is a really important topic because a lot of high functioning, especially men in high income positions, finance, real estate, they got to where they are, this so-called prestige and so-called stature in life because of this hyper fixations of being independent, hyperly so. And a lot of that is rooted in their parenting. They had to fend for themselves. And a lot of times I meet very, very mature younger people, men and women. And I realize, a lot of this maturity that the society praise is forced maturity. Nobody chooses to be mature when they don't have to. It's forced and necessitated by life. But then I share that because a lot of those friends of mine who are in extremely high income, high functioning individuals, now their biggest struggle in their relationship, in their marriage, and whatever is hyper independence. They don't know how to call for help. They don't know how to seek help when they want to. They don't know how to open up and vent to their partner because they were like, I have to burden the burden of this world on my shoulders because that's how they survived and it was adequate for them for X amount of years, but no more. But so hard to unprogram that tendency.
It is. And for me, it was a flip. It was a flip in that early on, like I said, 14, 15 years old, I would say your average typical teenager. I was into music, into sports, very sociable. I went to like all the school dances and everything. But direction wise, I didn't have any. I knew the things I wanted to try, but because of this particular moment, I was like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And again, through my 20s, I was directionless. I wasn't the recreational type where I didn't smoke, I didn't drink, I don't do any of that stuff. But I wasn't really applying myself in anything. I wasn't going to school because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't go, pursue much because what would it lead to? What was the point? Again, the trust issues. Until I had my moment in 2009 and I realized I can't live like this. I choose not to live like this. And recognizing that I took all of that on myself, carried all that weight, and it got me where? Who was I? And what was I doing? And then realizing, wow, this is my bottom. And, what I did and what I went through. I feel like I'm being vague because I don't know if I want to go down that road. But I think after that moment back in 2009, I realized I've got some living to do. I've got some decisions to make. And I made them. And I realized that I can ask for help. And I should ask for help when need be. And beginning to look for not only my purpose, but tapping into my potential. And here I am. I joke sometimes and say, you know what? People say you started late or, you started at an older age. But no, I'm only like 13 years old.
And I think that context helps me a lot because now I understand, he didn't have a life that he felt fulfilled in. He didn't have a life that he was truly comfortable living in until 2009, until this catalyzing event that I'm sure was dark and painful. But as we know how pain teachers go, right? They teach you some of the most important lessons for you to be receptive, which you are, and then you carry forward. But I just want to put this on a messaging board for men, because I'm a clinician, he's a mental health professional, plus 14 other things that he does, that especially for men, like this patriarchal framework of America, it disservices women in a very obvious way. The panic attacks, 70 cents for every dollar that man makes, all these things, the downsides of patriarchy is obvious for women. But if fucking disservice men equally in terms of mental health wise, that, oh, to be a man, you got to be 6 foot, machoism, you got to exhibit certain characteristics. Oh, you cannot ask for help. You have to be the provider, but also these characteristics that America wants you to become, but it doesn't have to be that way. And calling for help is no shame. Seeing a therapist is no shame. These are all just ways to better your life so you can be more optimal in whatever container you show up as. You want to make more money? Go see a therapist. I promise you, you will make more money. You will be better at your job, X, Y, and Z. And this is a really, really important and thing I'm very passionate about, that we're both passionate about.
Yeah. And even for myself, the therapist, like I'm, again, being a mental health professional, seek a coach. If there's anything you want to pursue in life or you really feel passionate about, get a coach, get a mentor. You have one, I have one, myself, in terms of like, not just a life coach in terms of the life perspective, but a professional coach. If it's something specific that you want to gear towards, find someone who does it and does it well and align your beliefs with that. It's being open and receptive to asking for that help, asking for the help, but also understanding that you can't do it by yourself. As the saying goes, going solo means going so low. And yeah, I don't want anybody to revisit what I've revisited back in 2009.
Yeah, that's a good one. You're a man of one-liners, he seems. But I like that a lot. So speaking of messaging board, Marco, we're definitely coming towards the end of the episode.
Yeah.
So before I hit you with the signature hallmark discover more question that I know you're familiar with, I want you to hit you up and tie this with this menu, the Me and You, the Man's University program you're in the developing of currently as we speak. So let's say on a written giant messaging board outside of the mentorship program, like mentored by Marco or whatever Man's University name you want to come up with, what will be some of the messages and words written on that messaging board for the people to see?
First and foremost, you are enough. A lot of times the men don't feel like they're good enough or worthy enough because of how they provide or what they provide outside of a job or a status. So understanding that you are enough. You are not alone, and that you don't have to do it by yourself. Whether you're asking your spouse or whoever for help, you are not alone in that aspect. There are men out there. I like to use the term like-minded because in some way, shape, or form, men have that same je ne sais quoi. like those ins and outs, of each man. We cry, we laugh, we have emotions. We all have emotions. We all have feelings. It's how we choose to tap into them. So you're not alone in that. You're allowed to think. You're allowed to feel. You're allowed to react, and recognize what it is you're reacting to and build from that. Lastly, you are the one. You are the one. You are enough. You're not alone. You are the one. You are the one in who determines your fate. Who determines the life you choose? It's ultimately up to you. Not a job, not a position, anything external. It's you. It's in you.
Yeah, that reminds me about a message that the episode will be releasing next week. His name is Arsh. He's the host of the top 200 business podcasts in the world. And he talks about, he believes anyone can always rebrand themselves, especially for like a smaller startup or business owner. Example he gave was Airbnb. Right? They tried to package them once to the VC, venture capitalist, didn't work. They repackaged it again for the second time, that didn't work. They did it for the third and fourth time. And then through third and fourth time, that's when Airbnb that we know now stuck and became the Airbnb of today. So I sense that message from what you just said, right? That you are enough and that you are worthy. And that you can always have a choice and power in how you want to transform your life. If there's anything you don't really like about yourself because of circumstances, because of the decision so far, it's never too late. Just like how you went into acting and modeling at 2015, being coached at the moment by film students who's half your age. So I just want to highlight that twice.
Yeah. And a lot of it too, also to echo that sentiment as far as, things changing, Airbnb changing. A lot of times people get discouraged based on ideas. Everybody, I always say this, everybody has an amazing idea. But why don't you see that great idea through? How come a lot of times we don't see that great idea come to fruition or into play? It's because we get discouraged along the way, or we don't know what to do, or we don't know how to respond to it, or we're thinking ahead. We're thinking of steps 8, 9, and 10 without taking step 1. And that idea never sees the light of day. And then the DJ in me comes along and I go, you know what was once a great idea? The song Thriller from Michael Jackson. Greatest selling album of all time, right? We all know the video and the dancing and everything like that. You're in LA, that's where they filmed the video and everything. But not a lot of people know Thriller. The idea of Thriller was a song called Starlight. Doesn't have the same ring to it, right? Doesn't have the same feel, right? Not dancing to that. Not dancing with zombies or anything. But what I'm taking from that is every great idea can be adjusted. Every great idea can be modified. If you're surrounding yourself with the right supports, if you're asking the right questions, not only of yourself, but those around you. Every great idea can see the light of day if you're willing to follow through with it. And I know it's easier said than done because we will get discouraged and we will get upset at the lack of effort or the lack of courage sometimes. But understand that every idea can be adjusted. Every idea can be modified. And it's not going to be what you thought it would be here and what it ends up being here. It's the fun you have along the way. So again, that fear and excitement part of it, choose joy, choose the excitement.
It's definitely a mic drop moment for us to enter the Discover More question. So the question serves twofold, Mark. The first question is, after this very encompassing and insightful conversation with you, Marco, what is an area in your life, any sectors of your life you want to discover more about after this? And the second fold is, what is an area or domain in our listeners' life that you want to encourage or even challenge them to discover more about after this conversation?
I am really, really afraid, and I'm admitting this, I am really, really afraid of working out sometimes. And this stems from one time I went to the gym and threw up in public. I was working with a trainer and they just kind of, I don't know if they did it on purpose. I still don't to this day know if they did it on purpose. Freaked me out, scared me. And I was just like, I don't like that feeling. I don't want to do that. So I got discouraged from working out. So what I wanted to discover more is my potential at my age now going forward. Because in your 20s, and you'll soon to see in your 30s, we're a different animal, right? We do things, consequence, it's there, but it's not as risky, like we'll deal with it in the morning. But for someone like myself in your mid 40s, I want to discover more what I can do in terms of my health and wellness, my flexibility, pushing myself. But it doesn't mean pushing myself like these heavy weights or anything like that. Discovering more possibilities with yoga, with meditation, with roller skating. I freaking love roller skating. It was something I did as a kid and I rediscovered it and I want to discover more of it. Being able to skate backwards. I just learned how to, this year, to roller skate backwards. Like when you go to the skating rink and they say backward skate only, I can do that now. And I love that because it's not only a form of leisure, it's wellness. There's activity involved, there's cardio involved, coordination, as far as motor skills, but also with yoga, the mindfulness that comes with that, slowing everything down and being able to just not, work so strenuously, but my breathing, and being able to tap into that and recognizing that this is all building my health and increasing my strength, physically, mentally, emotionally. So I want to discover more of that of myself. What was the second part as far as discovering more?
For the listeners.
For the listeners, I would challenge listeners to discover more about who they are. And what I mean by that is, I like to do this and I like to do that. No, challenge yourself by asking, who are you? A lot of times we answer that question by what we do. Well, I'm an actor, a model, a barber. Not so much about what you do. Who are you? What motivates you? What gets you out of bed in the morning? What do you thrive on? What are you afraid of? What are you excited by? Challenge yourself by discovering more about you. What makes you tick? Where were you 10 years ago as opposed to today? Where would you like to see yourself in 10 years? Okay, 1 year. No, we don't want to do what the therapist did, and as far as the active listening. But where do you see yourself in the future? So by discovering more of yourself and asking that question of who are you?
And it's called discovering more because it's an active verb, right? It's not just discover, it's discovering more because it's active. It's an active process.
Yeah. And it can be fun. It can be fun because a lot of times, like a question like that, it can be scary. Like, a lot of people say, well, I don't know who I am. That's part of the process. Like, I was able to discover more about myself by confronting my fears, by confronting the things that I was afraid to attempt before, whether it was modeling, acting. Like I said, the first time I ever did a print job as a model, and I was like, I don't know where to put my hands. Like, what do I do? Because you think, on the surface, you think model, hey, their face. Okay, I gave my headshot and someone selected me, but now I have to pose or turn or do something. And I'm like, there's a lot of layers. There's a lot of elements to that. I respect it a lot more, but I'm also discovering more of what it entails by, connecting with it and being open to it. Same thing with acting and taking different roles. I took my first drama role this year. I'm usually someone who does a lot of commercial work, but I took a dramatic role where I actually have to pull my hair back in a ponytail and I say the F word a lot. And it was different for me because I wanted to challenge myself in a way where I was like, this isn't me per se. This isn't like how I would handle a certain situation, but this is what the script calls for. And how would I portray this? And then in turn, discovering more about what the director wants or discovering more about what the co-stars, the people I'm working with, how we can all make this connection work. So being able to discover all those things is a great play on words for yourself in terms of the action involved with it, but also there's a lot of potential in it. There's a lot of fun and excitement in it.
Yeah, and it's like life, right? It's a multi-layered, that's what life is. It's very non-linear, right? And this reminds me about a quote by Eleanor Roosevelt. She said, everything you desire, no, on the other side of fear is everything you desire. And I know you've been very big on your mental health minutes about if you're scared, if you're afraid, do it scared, do it afraid. And it's honestly, you can unlock so many doors and gateways to life and in life if you just go a little bit farther than you think you can. And it's under those pressure, I think diamonds or gems are made. But obviously that's a very cliche advice. But yeah, speaking of everything you desire is on the other side, where can people connect with you? This is where I roll out the red carpet for you. If they want to check out your Mental Health Monday on Twitch, becomes one of your patrons, one of your subscribers, or connect with you on Instagram, ask you a couple mental health or DJ or acting or modeling or barber related positions, where could they find you?
Yeah, I'm very accessible and very open to all of that in terms of like the DMs and the messages as well. On Instagram and Twitch, it's Marco Rosario 24. That's my full name and the number 24 at the end. Okay, and this is interesting. Folks ask me what the 24 is. So this is breaking news here. The 24 is my birthday, 10/14. So a lot of folks have asked why the 24, why the significance. It's always been my favorite number, but 24 is a combination of my birthday, 10/14. But on Instagram, it's Marco Rosario 24. On Twitch, twitch.tv/Marco Rosario 24. Mentored by Marco is my business on Google, which I was literally just verified this week, so I'm excited for that. It was something my coach had discussed with me and saying, you need to step into these opportunities. You've created a platform on Twitch, you've created a following where folks are willing to not only listen to you, but work with you and want to work with you. It's time to do that. And on the other side of fear is everything I desire, and I ultimately desire to help others. So mentored by Marco, the name came to me. And I was like, that's what we're going to go with as far as my mentoring and coaching business, which is getting started. The men's group menu that we talked about, MEMU, is something that can be coordinated through Twitch, but ultimately we do that men's group where right now I've got a good 8 to 10 guys, and we're building more and more on that. We do Zoom calls. We'll be opening up a Discord for more interactive stuff in terms of coping strategies and techniques. So again, any of those platforms, you can reach out and connect with me, and I'd be more than happy to help you out or work with you.
Aside from all these amazing things that Mark's doing, also congratulations on Google verification officially on the show. But that as someone who's in mid 40s, he just had another opportunity to start a brand new business on Google through the opportunity of Reel going viral, his following and his community is cultivating and growing on Twitch. I want to conclude the episode on that note because most of our listeners in between 23 to 27, that's like the main demographic for age-wise. Podcast analytics is horrible, so there's very limited information aside from downloads and all that. And I think that's really important because, like as I said earlier, life is both short and long. And you can do so many things when you think, oh, I'm too old, it's too late. I don't have this X, Y, and Z, fill in the blank. It's not. Mark, after this entire episode, if you have made it to this far, Mark is doing cool things in life. And now he's doing even additional thing because he knows what he wants. He's purposeful and he's saying no to the misaligned opportunities, but saying yes to the right ones. And that's huge. And he's 46. And a lot of the greats, a lot of the greats in this world, they didn't start doing what put them on the map, so to speak, until in their 40s and 50s. And I've seen that success stories. I've seen those data points, so-called data points in my life, in my own show with 80 plus guests I've done. And that is a universal theme that I really want people to really sip in, that you can reinvent and do more with your life. If you want to, doesn't matter the age, doesn't matter the conditions. Of course, there's extreme scenarios, right? But such an amazing way. And I really enjoyed this episode with you, Mark. You shared a lot of really important things. And I really feel like having someone like you that represents different pathway of life, because there's many ways to get to the same point, right? But I think how we choose that path is really important. Do you have any parting words to the listeners to close up this episode?
Nothing in that. I appreciate y'all, your listening. I appreciate your insight as well. I appreciate you having me. If your demographic is 23 to 27, my parting words to them would be try not or do not compare yourself to anyone. To compare is unfair, I like to say, because a lot of times, and we look at that stuff, whether it's social media or people we see on an everyday basis, comparing yourself is the first step in detracting you from what it is you want to do.
Awesome. Yeah, that's how we're going to end today's episode. And to all the listeners, as always, please like, subscribe, and comment. That really helps the channel grow. This is an important topic we're having, not just mental health, but that you don't have to stick to the one fixed pathway that life calls you to. That's not real. That's your self-talk, that's the government, that's the society, but you can choose your own path. And as Marco said beautifully, you get to choose joy when you want to, no matter the circumstances. And with that, thank you to everyone for discovering more with us this week. And as always, see you next time.